I'm getting back into my responses to the CES letter. So, the normal disclaimer, this is my own personal opinion. I do not represent the church or its leaders in any way. This is simply me offering my own thoughts and insights regarding the various issues that are being raised in this letter. Continuing here with the first section, which is titled The Book of Mormon, this is moving on to point number 7. Now, with the last point, it was an extremely long one, and so I had to cut it down as much as possible. I think I did at least 2 videos for it. This one actually is a little bit longer. However, it is longer largely because it includes a number of graphics, primarily maps. But it does divide itself into 3 basic parts. So I will be dividing the video into 3 basic parts, even though there will be overlap in what my response is to them. Issue number 7, Book of Mormon Geography. Many Book of Mormon names and places are strikingly similar to many local names and places of the region where Joseph Smith lived. The following 2 maps show the Book of Mormon geography compared to Joseph Smith's geography. The first map, as it states, claims to be the Book of Mormon geography. The second map says it is the geography of the northeast United States and southeast Canada, the area around where Joseph Smith lived in the 1820s. As far as I can tell, this map is accurate. The first map is the proposed map, constructed from internal comparisons in the Book of Mormon. Throughout the Book of Mormon, we read of such features as the narrow neck of land, which was a day-and-a-half's journey, or roughly 30 miles, separating 2 great seas. We also read about the hill Onidah and the Hill Ramah, all place names in the land of Joseph Smith's youth. We read in the Book of Mormon of the city of Teancum, named for a warrior named Teancum, who helped General Moroni fight in the land of desolation. In Joseph Smith's era, an Indian chief named Tecumseh fought and died near the narrow neck of land in helping the British in the War of 1812. Today, the city Tecumseh, near the narrow neck of land, is named after this chief. We see the Book of Mormon city Kishkumen located near an area named on modern maps as Kishiminatis. Hard to pronounce. Kishiminatis. There are more than a dozen Book of Mormon names that are the same as, or nearly the same as, modern geographical locations. Okay, and they provide this table of modern geographic place names and Book of Mormon names. And then they conclude this question: why are there so many names similar to the Book of Mormon names in the region where Joseph Smith lived? Is this really just a coincidence? And they do mention an update, additional information found, or additional information and analysis can be found at the given link, which is just another page on their website. So, first of all, he gives us these 2 maps, one claiming to be the Book of Mormon geography, the other claiming to be the geography of the Great Lakes area during the time of Joseph Smith. Now, I do not have access to all the maps of the 1800s, so I will assume that his map of what he calls the Joseph Smith's geography is accurate for now. However, the map that he gives of Book of Mormon geography is not accurate. He has several issues with this. For instance, he places the city of Jacob-Uyoth in the southwest and in the land southward, when it should be as far north as possible in the land northward. He has the land of Shur is also apparently in the land southward, and it should be in the land northward. He has the Ramah, which should be in New York, because it's the same hill as Cumorah, which is also placed in the land southward here, which should be in the land northward. So, and finally, Morianton, he has in the land northward, and that should be in the land southward. And it should be on the east, not in the west. So there are these several issues with his geography. However, his main point that Joseph Smith just borrowed these names and modified them slightly for the Book of Mormon would still hold regardless of the exact geography. But See, the problem with this issue, the problem or I'll say the issue with his issue, is he's asking the wrong question. See, he is quite literally asking, if the Book of Mormon is fake, if it is a fraud, what kind of evidence can we find that would support our claim that it's a fraud? And he looks at this and says, oh, look at this, these names are similar, therefore it's fraud. But he's not asking the right question. And that's the problem. See, when we accept the Book of Mormon is true, then the question doesn't become, how can we prove it fake? But the question isn't, how do we prove it true? See, I already know the Book of Mormon is true. I accept it as truth. It goes back to my original post with the 5 truths. I accept the Book of Mormon as true. It is true scripture. It is true history. Given that it is true, what would we expect when it comes to the names of people and places in the Book of Mormon as compared to the rest of the world? That's the question that needs to be asked. What would be the logical relationship between them? And that's where we get into where his whole argument completely falls apart. Because he is not asking the right question. And I'll get back to that in just a moment. Okay, so when we ask the question, what would we expect? First of all, we've got to examine the history as presented in the Book of Mormon. So if we accept the Book of Mormon as true history, then we accept that Lehi and his family and those traveling with him were Jews from Jerusalem around 600 BC. Coming from that heritage, we would expect the Book of Mormon to be full of Hebrew names, of Jewish names, which is what we find all through. There's many of them all through the Book of Mormon. Now, America also comes out of a Judeo-Christian heritage. The Bible is a huge part of our heritage, and there are many places throughout the Western world that are named for people and places in the Bible. Thus we have this shared heritage with the Book of Mormon. So, is it any wonder, or would we not expect, that names from the Book of Mormon that are taken from the Bible would also likely appear in the United States, or any other Western country for that matter? This is something, many states have these names, and if the Book of Mormon peoples are coming out of Jerusalem, they are Jews, we would expect them to also have these names. So now we look at the table that he provides for us here, where we have modern geographic places compared to Book of Mormon names. Logically speaking, names taken from the Bible, or Hebrew names, would logically appear in both. So those would pose us no issue, but we can just remove them. Now, those are the ones that are directly from the Bible. But what about ones that are derivatives of Hebrew names? Would this not also be expected? These derivatives of Bible names would also be logically found in both places. Be slightly different because the languages are a little different, but we would expect these derivatives. And so we would remove those derivatives from this list as names that pose no significant issue. But continuing on, what would be the next thing we would expect? One thing that anybody who is familiar with the United States would know is that there are dozens, hundreds, if not thousands of names of places derived from the native languages. And if the Book of Mormon is the actual history of the American continents, then the native languages are derived from the Book of Mormon. Therefore, we would expect similar names from the Book of Mormon and native languages. And therefore, we can remove any names of native populations that are similar to Book of Mormon names, because we would expect these similarities to exist. Now, these are all the common names, the obvious ones. But there is also, we know, that if they came out of Jerusalem in the 600s, in 600 BC, as the Book of Mormon states, then they would have also been familiar with other Middle Eastern languages. Nephi himself says he was learned in the language of the Egyptians, and in 600 BC we've already had the first two phases of the Babylonian captivity. And they are, Israel is a vassal state to Babylon. So having Babylonian names, Egyptian names, other names of languages common to the Middle East would also be not necessarily, the Hebrew is more expected, but the other names are understandable. There's no issue with that. Now, this would also include, in this one I would include names that are clear derivatives of Middle Eastern names, that are so similar to Middle Eastern names that we can understand that over time, over the span of 500 years or so, the difference in the names would not be surprising. As languages change over time, the names change over time. But if we remove those as well, we are left with 4 names that we cannot logically dismiss as being a logical outcome given the history presented in the Book of Mormon compared to the heritage and history of the United States. All the names that we would expect to have similarities with, the ones that are of Hebrew or Middle Eastern origin, or especially those directly from the Bible, as well as those that are derived from the native languages of the United States, which would have developed from the Book of Mormon peoples and languages. This leaves us with 4 on this list. And with these 4, the similarities that are claimed are so minor as to be inconsequential. For instance, they compare the name Antioch to the name Onidah. Okay, they have an A and an N and an I. Not even, it's not even that syllable that's the same. You got 3 letters that are the same. Onidah is not similar to Antioch in any real way. And the same thing you can see, we go down, we got this. Ripple Lake is supposed to be the origin of the name Ripley-Ancum. The only similarity is the RIP at the beginning. So, as I say, most every name that they list can just be dismissed as being a logical result of the history and heritage of the two people that are coming together. And the rest are so superficial as to be meaningless. So having addressed the general complaint that names are similar between the Book of Mormon and modern United States, let us look at a couple of their claims in what they say rather than the table of names that they give. For instance, here it talks about the city of Teancum and the man Teancum as mentioned in the Book of Mormon. They claim the city of Teancum is named after the man Teancum. The problem is that the Book of Mormon doesn't actually state this. We do have a man, a captain, named Teancum during the time of Captain Moroni, about 50 years BC. Then about 400 years BC, we read about a city Teancum. Is it named after the man that lived 450 years earlier? Possibly, but it is not stated. Therefore, they are making a claim that is not actually made in the Book of Mormon, and therefore should not be made. Now, they do rightly say that Teancum himself, he was a captain, and he fought in the land, they say he fought in the land of desolation. He did not fight in the land of desolation. He fought in the land southward around Zarahemla and the land bountiful. He never went into the land of desolation. So again, we have an inaccuracy. Then they state that there is the Indian chief, rightly so, named Tecumseh, who lived and fought in the War of 1812, where he was killed. They say he died near the narrow neck of land. They also state that there is a city that is named after Tecumseh, and they are claiming a relationship here. We have a city, Teancum, named after a General Teancum in the Book of Mormon, and we have a city, Tecumseh, named after an Indian chieftain, Tecumseh, in the time of Joseph Smith. A few issues with this, as I already pointed out, their claims regarding Teancum and the city Teancum in the Book of Mormon are not accurate. Second of all, the man Tecumseh, the city that is named after him, there's actually two. There's one in Michigan and there's one in Canada. The city that they actually link to is the city in Ontario, Canada, which was not named Tecumseh until 1912. It was renamed at the 100th or centennial celebration of Tecumseh's death. So the city they link to it was not called Tecumseh at the time of Joseph Smith. It was referred to as a postal station, because it had so few people there. It was just a small pit stop on your way to the town of Windsor. However, the town of Tecumseh, Michigan, was established first in the year, I believe, 1824. But that's when it was very first settled, and this is in Michigan, several hundred miles away from where Joseph Smith was. And until the 1830s, it was a small little village of, I think they said, about 50 people around there. I can't remember exact numbers, but it was about 50 people, possibly less, and several hundred miles away. So the idea that Joseph Smith would have based anything on that city or that town is illogical. However, going back to my main point, Tecumseh is fairly similar to the name Teancum. And I'm perfectly willing to admit a relationship there. It's not as close as they're trying to claim, but I can admit there's a relationship there. But again, it's a relationship that is perfectly understandable, because over time, languages and names change. And so the name Teancum, which was had in the Book of Mormon times, 1,500 years later, could be rendered in modern languages as Tecumseh. There is no issue there for me, because it would be a logical progression. But regardless, the information they provide is inaccurate. Finally, I got to point this one out. They say that in the Book of Mormon there's the city of Kishkumen, located near an area named on modern maps as Kishiminetus. The problem here, first of all, the only real problem, there's a city named Kishkumen in the Book of Mormon, and there is a place called Kishiminetus in Pennsylvania. But the Book of Mormon does not state where the city of Kishkumen is. The city of Kishkumen is just listed as one of many cities destroyed in the destruction that happened at the death of Christ. We are never told where it is in relation to anything else. So to claim that the geography matches up like this is an outright lie. Or, if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, it is proof that he never read the Book of Mormon. One of those two things really has to be true, because if you read the Book of Mormon, you would know there is no geographical information as to where the city of Kishkumen was. But anyways, I'm going to end this section of the video here, and stay tuned for the next part.